Desmond sat in his massive mansion, surrounded by everything a man could ever dream of: luxury cars, gold ornaments, imported wine, and walls covered with million-dollar art. But none of it brought him peace. For years he had lived like a king, but his heart was empty. Every woman who came into his life saw his money first, and him second, or never. All they cared about was the lifestyle, not the man beneath the suit. One evening, as he sat alone, sipping from a crystal glass, an idea sparked in his mind. What if he became someone else? What if he threw away the cars, the designer suits, and the fame, and lived like an ordinary man, even just for a while? It was crazy, but maybe that was exactly what he needed. The next morning, Desmond bought an old beat-up taxi from a used lot. It coughed and groaned when it moved. The paint was peeling, and the seatbelts didn't even match. Perfect. He changed into plain clothes, cheap jeans, dusty sneakers and a faded cap, and started driving through the city, becoming just another face on the road. At first it was exciting. He picked up people from dusty markets, busy offices, and crowded bus stations. Nobody gave him a second. Look, to them he was just another poor driver trying to make ends meet. That's exactly what he wanted. One day a woman named Amina got in. She was charming, flirtatious, and had a smile that could melt steel. Desmond felt a flicker of hope, but by their third ride together, she started asking for small help. Some airtime credit here, a little cash there. Then it grew. School fees for a cousin, rent problems, her mother's fake surgery. Desmond tested her. He gave the money just to see where it would go. As expected, she kept coming back, always with a new story. Her love was never real. It was just hunger, in disguise. By now, Desmond felt the weight of disappointment pressing against his ribs. Was this all women ever saw in men like him? Was love only a currency now? Then, one evening, as the sun painted the sky orange and gold, Desmond saw a young woman by the roadside. She looked tired but calm. Her clothes were clean but simple. No flashy nails, no fake eyelashes, no perfume cloud. Just a quiet, peaceful presence. She waved. He stopped. Her name was Blessing. She asked how his day had been. Really asked. She didn't stare at her phone. She didn't ask for money. She paid her fare without complaint. And when she left, the taxi, she smiled, not the kind of smile that wants something, the kind that says, I see you. Desmond sat in the car for 10 minutes after she left, staring at the empty passenger seat. He didn't even know why. But something in him had shifted. He started looking for her. Days passed. Then, one morning, as he was turning a dusty corner, he saw her again walking to work. He offered her a ride. She smiled and got in like they were old friends. This time, they talked more. She told him about her sick father, about her job cleaning offices, about how she lived in a shared room with 2 other girls and still managed to send money back home. She wasn't bitter about her life. She was grateful for it. Desmond was hooked. He began picking her up more often, always acting like it was coincidence. But in his heart, he knew it wasn't. She made him feel real, human, seen. And for the first time in a long while, Desmond felt hope. Desmond couldn't stop thinking about Blessing. Her laughter stayed in his ears long after she stepped out of the taxi. Her words played in his mind every night before sleep. He had met many women, too many, but this one felt different. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she made him feel. Like a man, not a wallet. Every time she got into his taxi, she brought a kind of calm he hadn't known he needed. She never asked for free rides, never hinted at money problems. She treated him like a human being. That alone was priceless to him. But Desmond was a man who had been burned before. Scars don't fade just because someone is kind, so he decided to test her just to be sure. He didn't want to believe she was like the rest, but if she was, better to find out now. One rainy afternoon, as they drove through muddy streets, Desmond let out a deep sigh and said, I've been thinking of quitting this taxi job. The money's not enough. I can't even pay my rent sometimes. Blessing turned her head, eyes wide with worry. Oh no, that sounds really hard. But don't give up. You're a good person. Life gets better. Just hold on. Not once did she offer to pay his bills. Not once did she ask what else he owned or where he lived. She just encouraged him with warmth, the kind that can't be faked. Over the next few weeks, they talked more. Desmond shared stories about his poor man's life, how hard it was to get by, how people looked down on him. Blessing listened. With respect, never pity. And each time they said goodbye, Desmond felt like he was losing something important. One evening, he picked her up after a long, rainy day. The city was flooding and most people were stuck or angry. But when Blessing got into the car, her energy filled the air like music. She was soaked, her hair dripping, but she smiled like it was the best day of her life. "You know," she said, wiping water from her forehead, "some days are tough, but I tell myself, if I wake up again tomorrow, I have another chance. Life might not be easy, but I'm still breathing. That's enough to keep going." Desmond felt his chest tighten. This woman wasn't chasing anything but peace. Later that night, sitting alone in his dark room, not the mansion but the small rented room he used to keep up the act, he made his decision. He was falling in love with Blessing, but now came the hard part. Could he tell her the truth? Would she still feel the same if she knew he wasn't poor, that he didn't need to work a single day for the rest of his life? Desmond feared that moment more than he feared being alone, because if she walked away after knowing who he really was, it would break him. Still, the truth had to come out. She deserved to know. And more than that, he deserved to know if her love was real. He picked up his phone and sent her a message. "Hey, Blessing, can we meet tomorrow? I have something important to tell you." She replied within seconds. "Sure. Is everything okay?" He stared at the screen for a while before typing back, "I hope it will be." Desmond had lied to many people before, but this time he would finally tell the truth, and for the first time he was afraid of what it might cost. The next day, Desmond didn't dress like a taxi driver. He didn't wear the dusty cap or the worn-out shoes, no stained shirt, no pretending. He wore a simple but neat outfit, clean jeans, a white shirt, and sneakers. Nothing flashy, but something more him. He picked a quiet park, one with tall trees and not too many people, a place where the noise of the world couldn't reach them. When Blessing arrived, she smiled like always, warm, genuine, no filters. She wore a faded yellow dress and carried a little brown bag on her shoulder. She looked like sunshine and hope rolled into one. Desmond's heart thudded in his chest. As she sat next to him on the bench, he realized this was the first time they were together without the taxi in between them. He took a deep breath. "Blessing, there's something I need to tell you. It's a lot." She turned to face him, her eyes calm. "Okay, I'm listening." And so he told her everything, that his name was Desmond Oba, that he was a billionaire, that he owned luxury estates across the country, ran multiple businesses and never needed to work a day in his life, that the taxi job was never about money. It was a test. A way to escape the fake people, the gold diggers, the masks. He watched her face the entire time, waiting, fearing. But Blessing didn't scream. She didn't curse. She didn't even look angry. She just blinked and said softly, "So, you're rich?" Desmond nodded slowly. "Very, but I didn't want you to love the money. I wanted you to see me." There was silence between them, the kind that stretches and wraps around your throat like a rope. Then Blessing smiled, that same small, sincere smile. "I didn't fall in love with your car, Desmond. I fell in love with the man who asked about my day, who remembered I don't like onions, who listened when no one else did." Desmond's eyes stung. For a man who had everything, this moment felt richer than all the millions in his bank account. He took her hand. "I want you to meet my parents." That smile faded. "Your parents?" "Yeah. They've been trying to marry me off for years, always to women from rich families, but I want them to meet you, the woman I actually love." Blessing looked nervous. "They won't like me, Desmond. I'm not from that world." He leaned in gently. "That doesn't matter to me." But deep down, both of them knew it might. Still, a week later, Desmond brought her to the Oba. family mansion, a grand white house that looked like something out of a movie. Blessing had never stepped foot on land that clean, that vast. Her palms sweated as she walked beside Desmond, dressed in her neatest clothes. Nothing designer, but still modest and beautiful. Inside, Desmond's parents sat like royalty. His mother's smile vanished the moment she saw Blessing. His father's eyes narrowed slightly, measuring her silently. Desmond introduced her, voice proud. "This is Blessing, the woman I love." His mother spoke first, voice cold. "She's not what we expected." His father added, "She's not from our circle." Desmond tried to explain. He told them how they met, how she loved him before knowing who he really was. But none of that mattered to his parents. All they saw was a girl with no title, no family, name, no wealth. Blessing stayed silent, her hands folded in her lap, her back straight. She didn't cry, she didn't beg. But inside, she was breaking. Desmond stood up, his voice rising. "I didn't come here for your approval. I came to share my happiness, but if you can't respect her, then you don't respect me." He turned to Blessing. "Let's go." And they left. Out of the gates. Out of the comfort. Out of the family fortune, but not out of love. They still had each other. For now. Desmond stood by his decision. He had chosen Blessing, not just with his heart, but with his entire life. He walked away from his family's wealth, their empire, their legacy. And when he did, they made sure he knew what he was giving up. The next day, Desmond received a cold phone call from his father. "Since you've chosen that path," his father said, voice sharp and distant, "you're no longer entitled to the family business. Your accounts are frozen. The house, the cars, they stay with the name. And since you've turned your back on the name, you lose it all." Click. Just like that, Desmond Ober, the billionaire, became Desmond the broke man. He had nowhere to go, except Blessing's small single-room home in a noisy part of town. The place had no air conditioning, one shared bathroom, and the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors fight every night. But Blessing welcomed him with a smile and arms wide open. "It's not much," she said, "but you're welcome here." Desmond kissed her forehead. "It's more than I deserve." At first they were happy, poor but happy. They cooked together on a small gas stove, shared one bed, and counted coins before buying groceries. But love was there, in the small. Laughs in the quiet evenings, in the way Blessing placed her hand on his back when he couldn't sleep. But poverty has sharp claws. Desmond tried to find work, anything that could bring in money. He fixed cars at a small garage. It wasn't much, but it was honest. He came home every day tired, hands covered in grease, but he smiled for Blessing. Blessing, however, began to see the toll it was taking on him. The man who once lived in a mansion now walked home in worn shoes with a soaked shirt from the rain. He ate plain food, slept on a hard mattress, and stayed awake some nights, staring at the ceiling in silence. And Blessing started blaming herself. One night she sat beside him after dinner, her hands trembling. "Desmond," she whispered, "you gave up everything for me." He looked at her confused. "And I'd do it again." "But you're suffering," she said, eyes wet. "You don't belong in this life. You're not meant to live like this." Desmond held her hands. "I'm meant to be where you are. That's all that matters." She tried to smile, but the guilt crushed her. She had grown up in hardship. She could survive this. But Desmond, he had fallen from too high. And every day she watched the weight of that fall bend his shoulders. More. She brought it up again. "Maybe you should talk to your parents. Just try. They might forgive you." Desmond frowned. "They'll want something in return. Even if they do, at least you'll be safe again." Desmond hated the thought. He had walked away with pride. But Blessing wasn't asking him to bow. She was asking him to breathe again. After weeks of watching her cry in secret, watching their food run short, watching the man he used to be disappear, Desmond finally agreed. He walked back into the mansion he had left behind. Everything was still the same. Polished floors, expensive rugs, cold silence. His father sat in his grand study. Desmond entered quietly. His father didn't look surprised. "You're back." Desmond nodded. "I need help." The old man leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Of course you do, but everything has a price. Desmond braced himself. You want the name back, the wealth? Then you'll marry Evelyn as my business partner's daughter. Desmond's heart dropped. Evelyn. Loud, shallow, arrogant. A woman whose love was for selfies and champagne, not people, but this was the cost, and Desmond was already tired of fighting. He walked out of the study knowing what he had to do. When he got home, he sat beside Blessing and told her everything. Her hands went cold. You're going to marry her? She whispered. I have to, he said, for our survival. Blessing looked away, her tears silent. I don't want to lose you, he said, his voice cracking. You already have, she replied. Desmond's wedding to Evelyn was a grand affair, the kind that made headlines, the kind where helicopters buzzed overhead and cameras flashed so hard they could blind you, gold drapes, glass chandeliers, imported wine, and guests dressed like royalty. Everything glittered except the groom's eyes. Desmond stood at the altar in a crisp black tuxedo, but his smile was fake. His heart wasn't there. His heart was somewhere far away, in a small, dusty neighborhood, probably staring out a window, silently breaking. As the priest said, "Do you take this woman?" Desmond whispered, "I do." But inside he was screaming. Evelyn was radiant in her designer gown, beaming like she had won a trophy, and in her mind she had. She didn't care about Desmond's silence. All she wanted was the ring and the title, Mrs. Evelyn Ober, wife to the heir of an empire. But their marriage was cold from day one. Evelyn slept in one room, Desmond in another. They barely spoke, except at public events where smiles were staged, and hands were forced to hold. She continued her lavish life, shopping sprees, spa days, designer shows, while Desmond buried himself in work, meetings, and silence. Meanwhile, somewhere on the other side of the city, Blessing sat in her small room, holding her stomach with both hands. Not from hunger, but from movement. Her belly had begun to swell. She was 4 months pregnant. She hadn't realized it earlier because her periods had still come lightly. But now there was no doubt. She was carrying Desmond's child. No, not just one child. Twins. The news hit her like thunder, a strange mix of fear, joy, and heartbreak. Her love story was over, but a new chapter had begun inside her. She wanted to tell Desmond. Her heart screamed for it, but her mind told her no. He was married now, tied to a woman of power. Telling him the truth would only bring more drama, more pain. So Blessing made a decision. She would raise the children alone. She found a small job washing clothes, worked long hours, ate little so the babies could have more. She talked to her stomach every night, whispering love to her unborn babies, praying that one day they would meet their father when the time was right. But fate had other plans. One sunny afternoon, Desmond's mother, Mrs. Ober, decided to visit a local market she rarely went to, just to escape the suffocation of the mansion. She walked through the rows of vegetables and spices, enjoying the simple air when her eyes caught something familiar. It was Blessing. Her face was tired. Her dress was loose, her hair pulled back in a scarf. But it was her, and she was heavily pregnant. Mrs. Ober froze. At first she assumed Blessing had moved on and was pregnant by someone else, but something in her gut said no. She walked up slowly. "Blessing?" she asked, unsure. Blessing turned. Her eyes widened with shock. There was silence. Heavy, thick silence. Then Mrs. Ober spoke softly. "Whose children are you carrying?" Blessing didn't want to lie. Her lips trembled, and then she said the words that changed everything. "They're Desmond's twins." Mrs. Ober nearly stumbled backward. Tears welled in her eyes. Not out of shame, but pure, uncontrollable joy. For years, she had begged God for grandchildren. And now, they were on the way. Without wasting a second, she grabbed Blessing's hand. "You can't stay here. You need rest, care, help. You're coming with me." Before Blessing could protest, she was already in the back seat of a luxury car, being driven away from poverty, towards something she didn't even know she deserved. That evening, Desmond came home from a business dinner. He found his mother smiling for the first time in months. The glow on her face made him curious. "What happened?" he asked, but she only smiled wider. "You'll know soon," she said, and in her heart she knew the storm was ending and the truth was ready to shine. 2 weeks passed. In those days, Desmond's mother visited Blessing every single afternoon. She brought fruits, warm soup, baby clothes, and soft music. She told no one, not even her husband, that she had found Blessing, that she was caring for Desmond's unborn children. She wanted the perfect moment to reveal the truth, and that moment came the day the twins were born, a boy and a girl, tiny, beautiful, healthy. Blessing cried the moment she held them, not just from the pain of labor, but from the storm of emotions. Crashing inside her, love, fear, loneliness, and quiet triumph. She had done it. She had brought them into the world without breaking. That morning, Desmond's mother called him, voice calm but urgent. "I need you to come with me to the hospital. One of my friends gave birth. I'd like to visit. I need you there." Desmond, though confused, agreed. His mother had been different lately, lighter, happier, and deep inside, a part of him still ached for something real, something missing. They drove together, silence filling the car. When they reached the hospital, Desmond followed her through quiet hallways until she opened a door and everything stopped. There she was, Blessing. Lying in the hospital bed, her skin glowing with sweat and tears, and in her arms, 2 tiny babies. Desmond froze, his throat closed up. He couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. He turned to his mother, wide-eyed. She nodded, voice trembling with joy. "They're yours." Desmond stumbled forward, his knees weak. He stood at the edge of the bed, staring down at the children, his children. One yawned, the other blinked lazily, tiny fingers curling. He dropped to his knees beside the bed, hands shaking. "Blessing. Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. She looked at him with tired eyes. "Because you had already sacrificed enough. I didn't want to be the reason you lost more." Desmond buried his face in his hands. "You were never the problem. I left my heart behind with you." He kissed her forehead, then kissed his daughter's tiny hand, then his son's cheek. "I'm not leaving this time. Ever again. But peace never lasts too long." Evelyn, Desmond's wife by name only, noticed something was off. The Aubers, especially Desmond's parents, had grown distant. Desmond was always out. His mother no longer entertained guests. Something was being hidden. She followed the driver one day, paid a little bribe, learned the truth, and when she did, hell broke loose. That same night, she called her father, screamed down the line that she had been humiliated, disrespected, discarded, all for a poor village girl, and 2 bastard children. Her father, a powerful businessman, exploded with rage. He called Desmond's father the next morning. "End this marriage, and I end our partnership. Pull out of every deal, destroy your empire." But Desmond's father had changed. He had held those twins in his arms. He had seen his son smile, a real smile, not the fake ones forced by business and expectations. So this time, he didn't bend. He said calmly, "Then pull out. We don't need your money. We already have something richer than any deal. A future." That was the end of the Ober-Evelyn alliance, of Desmond's fake marriage. Evelyn was told to pack and leave. Her father fumed, but the damage was done. Desmond brought Blessing and the twins home, not just into the mansion, into the family. There was no grand announcement. No press release, just a quiet dinner with his parents, a prayer of thanks and 2 bassinets beside the dining table. That night, after feeding his daughter and rocking his son to sleep, Desmond looked at Blessing. "You saved me," he whispered. Blessing smiled, exhausted but at peace. "No, you saved yourself. I just held the light." And for the first time in a very long time, the Ober house, once cold and filled with pride, felt like a home. Because love had returned, and this time it was real.